The first time Kang Junho saw Amara Okoye in handcuffs, he didn't recognize his own voice. It came out too loud, too sharp, echoing off the pale walls of the Seoul District Station like a man who had never begged before. "She didn't kidnap my child," he said, staring at the officer across the desk. "She saved her." Amara sat with her hands cuffed in front of her, shoulders back, chin lifted, the kind of stillness that came from pride battling humiliation. Her dark skin looked even deeper under the cold fluorescent light. A thin line of dried tears clung near her lower lashes, but her face refused to break again. And between them, small enough to disappear in the plastic chair, sat 5-year-old Hannah Kong with her curly hair gathered into 2 puff buns, soft, stubborn, unmistakably her late mother's child. A hospital wristband still hugged her wrist. Her breathing was quiet now, but her eyes carried the leftover terror of not being able to pull air into her chest. The officer cleared his throat, polite but unconvinced. "Mr. Kong, you understand the report. A foreign caregiver removed a minor from school without parental consent. The child is mixed nationality. That triggers procedures." Junho's jaw tightened. He was used to procedures. He ran a logistics empire that lived on rules, stamps, ports, and paperwork. But this was his daughter on the table like a file. He forced his voice calm. "Check the clinic. Check the records. Check my call logs. She tried to reach me." The officer turned to Hannah, softening his tone the way adults did when they wanted children to confirm an adult's story. "Hannah, can you tell me, did this lady take you away?" Hannah stared at him, then at her father, then at Amara. Her face tightened the way it always did when grown-ups lied with polite voices. She slid off the chair and walked to Amara like her body had already decided where safety lived. She leaned her small cheek against Amara's arm and wrapped both hands around Amara's cuffed wrists, as if she could unlock them with love. "That's my mama," Hannah said, clear and fearless. "Mama Amara doesn't steal me. Mama Amara keeps me breathing." The room went silent in a way that made even the officer's pen stop tapping. Junho felt his chest split open. A tear escaped before he could command it back into place, and the shock of it embarrassed him more than any boardroom loss ever had. Amara closed her eyes for 1 second, as if she was swallowing something sharp. Because the truth was, Hannah had called her mama long before there were handcuffs, long before there were police, before she even sat down in the Kong apartment. 2 months earlier, the Kong home in Gangnam didn't feel like a home. It was a glass and stone penthouse that looked down on the city like it didn't need anyone. Everything was expensive. Everything was spotless. The air smelled like money and quiet. After his wife died, Junho kept the place exactly the way it had been, as if cleanliness could keep grief from spreading. Shoes aligned, counters clear, curtains perfect. Hannah's toys collected into baskets like evidence that childhood had to be managed. He didn't do it because he didn't love her. He did it because he didn't know what to do with love when it hurt. His wife, Adiz Okie Kong, had been a black African woman with a laugh that filled rooms and a stubborn warmth that made even his coldest mood soften. She had come to Korea on a scholarship, stayed on talent, and built a life with him despite the stares and the whispers. She had taught him how to hold joy without questioning whether he deserved it. Then she died from complications after a sudden illness, fast enough that Junho still felt like he was waiting for someone to shout, "Cut," and return his life. Hannah was left with questions no 5-year-old should carry, and an asthma condition that flared whenever her emotions spiked. Junho tried to handle it like he handled everything: schedules, specialists, inhalers, humidifiers, and money thrown at the problem until it behaved. But the nights didn't behave. On the night he finally admitted he couldn't do it alone, Hannah woke up choking on air, small hands clawing at her own shirt, eyes wide with panic. Junho scooped her up, heart hammering, and sat with her in the bathroom while steam filled the room. He fumbled with the inhaler with hands that suddenly felt too large and useless. Hannah clung to him, trembling. "Where's Mama?" His throat tightened until it hurt. "Mama is with God, baby." Hannah's lips quivered. "I want Mama." Junho stared at his daughter and realized he didn't know how to answer a need that money couldn't meet. The next morning, he called his assistant, Minji, and his voice sounded like defeat. "Find a caregiver. A real one. Not temporary. Someone trained." Minji didn't ask questions. She sent a list before lunch. 3 candidates. all vetted through a high-end agency that serviced diplomats and CEOs. Junho read the profiles like contracts. One was older and strict. One was young and bubbly. The last was Amara Okoye, age 28, calm expression, childcare first aid certification, former teaching assistant, references from international families in Seoul, and one in Accra. Her file mentioned she spoke English and basic Korean. It also noted, prefers privacy, low online footprint. That made Junho pause. In his world, everyone wanted to be seen. Privacy felt like either maturity or a secret. Bring her, he said. The interview was set for Thursday, 4 p.m. At 3:58, Junho stood in the living room, suit jacket on, watch gleaming, face composed. Hannah sat on the floor with blocks, ignoring him in the way children did when they were deciding whether you were safe today. The doorbell rang. The camera showed a woman standing outside with a small handbag and a posture that didn't beg. Her hair was braided back into a low bun, her blouse simple, her skirt neat. Nothing flashy, nothing performative. She looked like a person who had learned how to survive without announcing it. Minji opened the door. Amara stepped in and paused, taking in the space with a quick, respectful glance. She didn't gasp at the skyline view, the designer furniture, the quiet wealth. She simply looked present. "Mr. Kong," she asked, voice soft but steady. Junho walked forward. "Yes, Kong Junho. You're Amara." "Yes, sir." Before he could offer her a seat, Hannah's head snapped up. Her eyes locked on Amara, as if a memory she couldn't explain had just walked into the room. She dropped the blocks, stood, and ran across the floor barefoot. Junho's body tensed. He wasn't used to Hannah running to strangers. Hannah stopped directly in front of Amara, staring up at her with a seriousness that made adults uncomfortable. Then she reached out and grabbed Amara's hand with both of hers like she'd been waiting for it. "Mama," Hannah said. Amara froze. Minji's mouth opened. Junho's lungs forgot how to work. Amara's fingers tightened gently around Hannah's small hands. She didn't pull away. She didn't laugh it off. Her eyes softened with something that looked like pain dressed up as calm. She knelt to Hannah's level. "Hello, sweet girl," she said carefully, in English first, then in Korean that was simple but clear. "Annyeong, Hannah." Hannah's face lit up. "Mama speaks Korean." Amara's lips trembled into the smallest smile. "A little." Junho found his voice, too sharp. "Hannah, that's not." Hannah turned and frowned at him. "It is." The certainty in his daughter's voice hit him like a small punch. Amara looked up at Junho, respectful but firm. "Would you like me to sit down and we start the interview, sir?" He nodded stiffly. "Yes." They moved toward the dining area. Hannah refused to let go of Amara's hand. She pulled a chair close and climbed up like she was claiming her place beside Amara. Junho asked questions the way he negotiated. Background, experience, routines, discipline, privacy, emergencies. He watched for hesitation. He watched for manipulation. Amara answered without trying to charm him. She didn't laugh too loudly. She didn't flatter him. She spoke like a woman who knew what she could do and didn't need theatrics. "Children obey better when they feel safe," she said. "So I start with safety and routine. The rest follows." Junho's eyes narrowed. "What about boundaries? In a home like this, staff must understand lines." Amara nodded. "I understand lines. I also understand grief. A grieving child needs consistency more than control." He didn't like that she could say the word grief without flinching. He asked why she left her last job. Amara's hands clasped together once. "I needed something stable. I have family responsibilities." "What family?" he asked, sharper than necessary. "My mother," Amara said. "She's ill, and I support younger siblings." Hannah chose that moment to tug Amara's sleeve. "Mama, I'm hungry." Amara glanced toward the kitchen and then at Junho. "May I get her a snack?" Minji started to stand, but Amara was already moving, like caring didn't need permission when a child's needs were simple and immediate. She washed her hands, found fruit, sliced it into small pieces, and returned with a plate and water. Hannah ate like she had been waiting for that exact tenderness. Junho watched, unsettled. He'd hired people before. None had changed the temperature of his home this quickly. When Amara returned to her seat, Hannah leaned against her like her body finally knew where to rest. Junho's phone buzzed. Investors. He ignored it and didn't even know why until later. He leaned back. "When can you start?" Amara's shoulders eased slightly. "Immediately." He nodded once. "You're hired." Hannah is everything. If anything happens, I know, Amara said, not interrupting, but ending his threat with truth. If anything happens to Hannah under my care, it will destroy me too. Hannah clapped like the deal had been signed by the universe. The first week, Amara didn't try to become part of Junho's life. She focused on Hannah. She woke her early, so mornings weren't rushed. She made breakfast that Hannah actually ate. She learned Hannah's asthma triggers and wrote notes in a small notebook. Cold air, dust, stress, crying, running too long. She kept the inhaler schedule like it was sacred. She put small warmth back into the home without asking permission. A child's drawing on the fridge, a soft blanket on the couch. Lullabies hummed quietly while folding laundry. Hannah began to laugh again. Junho watched from a distance like a man watching fire, needing it, afraid of it. One evening, he came home early and stopped in the hallway when he heard Amara's voice in Hannah's room. She was telling a story, not from a book, but from memory, the kind of story with rhythm that carried home inside it. And the spider thought he could trick everyone, Amara said, voice low and warm. But clever without kindness becomes a net that catches you too. Hannah giggled. Did he get stuck? Amara chuckled. He got stuck in his own plan. Hannah rolled onto her back, smiling. Mama Amara, tell the one about the lion who learned to share. Junho's throat tightened at the word mama. He didn't interrupt. After Hannah fell asleep, he found Amara washing dishes even though Minji usually did. You don't have to do that, he said. Amara glanced back. I like leaving spaces better than I found them. He hesitated, then said the thing he'd been carrying like a thorn. She keeps calling you mama. Amara's hands paused, then resumed slowly. Yes. I don't want her confused, he said, voice controlled. Amara turned to face him fully. She's not confused, sir. She's reaching. Children reach for the shape of safety. She's not replacing her mother. She's surviving her absence. Junho's jaw tightened. You don't know what she means. Amara's eyes held his. Then listen. Don't fight what she's telling you because it scares you. That night, Junho sat beside Hannah's bed and watched her sleep. The humidifier misted quietly. Her chest rose and fell, soft. He whispered, Why do you call her mama? Hannah's eyes fluttered open halfway. Sleep made her honest. Because mama went away, she murmured. And mama Amara stays. Junho closed his eyes, shame and relief mixing into something he couldn't name. By the third week, the home had changed enough that even the walls felt less cold. Then Yoon Seo-yeon returned. Seo-yeon had been Junho's fiancée, carefully chosen after Adiz died, pushed by family pressure and public image. She was elegant, polished, from a family that understood status like religion. Her smile was perfect. Her eyes were not. She walked into the penthouse wearing expensive perfume and confidence, kissed Junho's cheek like she owned his future, and then looked at Amara the way a queen looked at a servant who dared to breathe too loudly. And you must be the nanny, Seo-yeon said, sweet voice, sharp edge. Amara bowed slightly, respectful. Yes, ma'am. I'm Amara. Hannah stood behind Amara's legs like she'd built a fortress there. Seo-yeon crouched, smile bright. Hannah, I'm going to be your new mom soon. Hannah didn't smile. She didn't step forward. She simply grabbed Amara's hand tighter. Okay, Hannah said flatly, because she had learned politeness, not trust. Seo-yeon's smile held, but her eyes tightened. She stood and looked at Junho. She's shy. Junho nodded, too quickly. She's adjusting. Seo-yeon's gaze returned to Hannah's grip on Amara. She's attached. Amara's voice stayed calm. She's a child. Children attach when they feel safe. Seo-yeon laughed softly. Of course. Just make sure you remember your place. Amara's face didn't change. I always do. Later, when Seo-yeon and Junho were alone, she poured wine and said casually, You're depending on her. Junho rubbed his forehead. She's doing her job. Seo-yeon's voice turned silkier. Jobs can become ambitions, especially for foreign women in rich homes. And Hannah calling her mama? That's dangerous. Junho's jaw clenched. Don't start. I'm not starting anything, Seo-yeon said, sipping. I'm protecting what's ours. Junho stared at his glass, and for the first time, the word ours sounded like a cage. A week later, the trap arrived wrapped in something small. Adiz's necklace went missing. It wasn't just jewelry. It was the last thing Adiz had worn on their wedding day. Gold with a tiny pendant shaped like a star, warm against skin, now cold inside a velvet box. Junho kept it locked away in his study, away from accidental loss, away from the ache of touching it. That day, the safe drawer was open. The velvet box sat empty. Junho stared at it, the air leaving his lungs slowly. Minji swore she hadn't entered the study. The cleaner swore. The security guard swore. Seo-yun stood near the door, arms crossed, voice soft as poison. Who has access like that? Who moves around your home all day? Junho's eyes flicked toward the hallway. He found Amara in Hannah's room, helping her put on pajamas. Amara, he said, voice too flat. Amara turned, sensing danger immediately. Yes, sir. Junho held up the empty box. Where is it? Amara blinked. Where is what? The necklace, he said. My wife's necklace. Amara's brows knit. I don't know. I've never touched it. Seo-yun stepped into the doorway behind him, expression innocent. But you clean. You organize. You're always in rooms. Amara's eyes sharpened. Are you accusing me? Junho didn't answer fast enough. That silence was a verdict. Hannah looked up, confused. Appa. Amara stepped slightly away from Hannah, like she didn't want her fear to spill onto the child. I have never stolen anything, Amara said, voice steady even as her eyes began to shine. Not in this country. Not in any country. Not from you. Junho's jaw worked. Then where is it? Amara swallowed. Check the cameras. Seo-yun's eyes flicked, quick, involuntary, to the corner of the hallway camera. Junho noticed. His stomach tightened. He said slowly, Minji will check footage. Amara nodded. Please. But before any footage could clear her name, Junho's mother arrived. Madame Kong didn't knock the way normal people knocked. She arrived like authority. She stepped into the penthouse with a face trained to dislike discomfort and a mind trained to dislike scandal. Her gaze landed on Amara, and the temperature dropped. So this is the woman my granddaughter calls Mama, Madame Kong said in Korean, not bothering to hide her disgust. Junho stiffened. Yama. Madame Kong cut him off. Your fiancé told me. I warned you that bringing strange people into the home would bring trouble. Now your dead wife's necklace is missing. Amara understood enough Korean to catch the words dead wife and missing. Even without language, she understood hostility. Madame Kong pointed at Amara. Send her away. Tonight. Hannah cried out. No. Seo-yun stepped forward, voice gentle. Junho, this is getting embarrassing. Think of Hannah. Think of the company. Think of the media. Junho's chest tightened. He looked at Hannah's face, already panicking, and then at Amara's steady stare. Did you take it? He asked, voice lower, rough. Amara stared at him, pain flashing hot. No. Junho's voice tightened. Then swear. Amara's lips parted, disbelief and hurt mixing. Sir? I said no. Madame Kong snapped. Do you know what she will do? She will claim your child next. Foreign women come with plans. Seo-yun's eyes gleamed with satisfaction she tried to hide. Junho's fear rose, old and ugly. Fear of losing control. Fear of being used. Fear of being laughed at by a society that already watched him like a headline waiting to happen. He made a decision with his fear instead of his brain. Pack your things, he said to Amara, voice breaking slightly. Leave. Hannah screamed like something inside her was being ripped out. She grabbed Amara's skirt, clinging. Don't go. Hannah sobbed. Mama, please. Amara crouched and wiped Hannah's tears gently even as her own fell. Baby, breathe, she whispered. Breathe with me. Hannah shook, gulping air. I can't. I can't. Amara guided her to slow down, hand on her back, and Hannah's breathing steadied enough not to trigger another attack. Junho watched, throat burning with shame, even as he forced himself to stay hard. Amara stood, eyes wet but posture proud. She looked at Junho and said quietly, If you throw me out without proof, you will regret it. Then she walked out with a small bag, head held high, tears falling anyway because pride didn't stop heartbreak. That night, Hannah had the worst asthma attack she'd had in months. She coughed until her face turned red, eyes wide with terror. Junho rushed her to the hospital, carrying her through the automatic doors like his wealth meant nothing against oxygen. In the emergency room, the doctor asked questions. When was her last dose? What triggered it? What routine was she on? And Junho realized with a cold sinking feeling that he didn't know the details the way Amara did. He'd been present with money, absent with attention. Hannah wheezed through tears. Mama, Amara. Mama. Junho's chest cracked open. At 2:06 a.m., Minji called him, voice urgent. Sir, we checked the hallway footage. Junho stood in a sterile corridor watching a video on Minji's tablet. It showed Seo-yun walking down the hallway toward his study, glancing around. It showed her slipping inside. It showed her leaving minutes later, smoothing her dress, holding something small that caught the camera light like guilt. Junho's vision tilted. Again, he said, voice low and deadly. Minji replayed it. Junho's hands shook with rage. Rage at Seo-yun, rage at his mother's cruelty, rage at himself for being so easy to manipulate when grief poked his wounds. By dawn, Hannah was stable. Junho drove home with eyes that felt like broken glass. Seo-yun opened the door in silk pajamas, blinking innocence. Junho, how is Hannah? He held up the tablet. Where is it? Seo-yun's gaze flicked to the screen. Fear flashed, then arrogance returned. So, she said softly, you're choosing her. Junho's voice was cold. Where's my wife's necklace? Seo-yun exhaled and smiled bitterly. Fine. I took it. Why? His voice cracked around the word. Seo-yun stepped closer. Because you were losing Hannah to her. Hannah was calling her mama. Hannah was leaning on her like she belonged. And you were letting it happen. Junho stared at her, stunned. She was caring for my daughter. Seo-yun's face twisted. She wanted more. Foreign women in rich homes always want more. Junho's voice rose. You stole my dead wife's necklace to frame her. Seo-yun's eyes glittered. And it worked. The shame hit him so hard he felt nauseated. He said, voice shaking with fury, get out of my house. Seo-yun blinked. Junho, get out, he repeated. Now. She stared at him, then grabbed her things, slamming doors like she wanted the whole building to feel her anger. Madame Kong arrived later and demanded explanations. Junho didn't soften his voice for her. You helped frame an innocent woman, he said. You terrified your granddaughter. If you want to be in Hannah's life, you will respect Hannah's peace. His mother stared at him like she didn't recognize her son. Love makes men foolish, she snapped. Junho's eyes were red. Then I'm done being wise at the cost of my child. He called Amara. Voicemail. He called again. Nothing. He texted, I was wrong. Please. Hannah needs you. I need you to come back. He stared at the message like regret could turn into a bridge. That afternoon, Minji told him quietly, Sir, she's at the gate. Junho's heart jumped so hard it hurt. Amara stood outside the building entrance, a small bag at her side, eyes guarded. She looked like a woman who had cried herself empty and came back anyway, because someone smaller depended on her strength. Junho stepped toward her, voice rough. Amara. She didn't move closer. You called. I saw the footage, he said, words tumbling. Seo-yun, she did it. I'm sorry. I was. You were afraid. Amara finished, voice calm. And fear made you cruel. He swallowed hard. Hannah, she's been asking for you. Amara's expression softened at the mention of Hannah, then hardened again at the memory of being discarded. Hannah doesn't need me, she said quietly. Hannah needs her father to stop letting other people's voices be louder than her breathing. Junho flinched. I'm trying. Amara looked at him for a long moment. Then start with the truth. Tell her you were wrong. Don't hide behind excuses. He nodded. I will. Amara's gaze moved past him toward the elevator, toward the home she'd warmed and then been thrown out of. And Junho, don't ever punish me for saving her. His throat tightened. Never again. Amara walked in. Hannah saw her and bolted from the couch like her body had been waiting. Mama. She launched into Amara's arms, sobbing. Amara dropped to her knees and held Hannah tightly, kissing her forehead, whispering, I'm here. I'm here. Hannah pulled back, tears streaming. You left. I didn't want to, Amara whispered. Hannah turned toward Junho, voice shaking with betrayal. Appa sent you. Junho knelt, forcing himself down to his daughter's level like humility was a language he had to learn. Yes, he said, voice cracking. I did. Hannah's face crumpled. Why? Because I was afraid, Junho admitted. And I believed a lie. And I hurt you. Hannah's small voice trembled. Don't do it again. Junho's eyes filled. I won't. I promise. Amara watched him, not forgiving yet, but listening. In the weeks after, Junho changed in small ways that mattered more than big speeches. He came home earlier. He learned Hannah's medication schedule. He attended her bedtime routine instead of hiding behind his laptop. He apologized without defending himself. He stopped letting his mother's disapproval steer his decisions. He told Seo-yun never to contact him again. Amara stayed focused on Hannah, keeping her heart guarded, because care was easy, but trust was expensive. Then the day that dragged them back into a nightmare came disguised as a school event. Hannah had a small performance. Amara helped her practice lines, clapping and laughing until Hannah's confidence returned. Junho promised he would be there. But that morning a shipment crisis hit one of Junho's ports, and his phone became a war zone. He told Hannah, "I'll come," and meant it, but he also meant 1,000 other urgent promises. At the school, Hannah stood on stage with other children and scanned the room. Amara sat in front, smiling wide, hands ready to clap. Hannah's eyes searched for her father. He wasn't there. Hannah's face fell. Her voice trembled during her lines. She froze once, panic rising, and Amara mouthed the words to her, guiding her through. After the show, other children ran into parents' arms. Hannah walked slowly toward Amara, shoulders drooping. "He didn't come," she whispered. Amara's heart tightened with anger and tenderness at the same time. "I know, baby." Hannah's voice shook. "Work loves him more." The words were small, but they cut deep. On the way home, Hannah went quiet. Too quiet. Stress sat in her chest like a weight. By the time they reached the building lobby, Hannah started wheezing. Amara reacted instantly, but the wheeze didn't ease quickly. Hannah's eyes widened with fear. Amara called Junho. No answer. She called again. Voicemail. Hannah clutched Amara's shirt, gasping, "Mama." Amara didn't waste time. She scooped Hannah up, grabbed the inhaler bag, and rushed to the clinic 2 streets away. The doctor started treatment, and Hannah's breathing slowly steadied. Then Junho burst through the clinic doors, face wild with panic. Relief and fear collided in his eyes when he saw Hannah with the nebulizer mask. "What happened?" he demanded, voice too loud. Amara's eyes flashed. She couldn't breathe. "Why didn't you tell me?" he snapped, fear making him irrational. "I called you." Amara shot back, then softened immediately when Hannah whimpered. "I called you twice." Junho's breath shook, and then Seo-yun's voice entered the room like a blade. "Junho," she said from behind him, dressed too perfectly for a rushed emergency. "This is what I warned you about. She took your child without permission." Amara went still. Her stomach dropped. Junho turned, shocked. "What are you doing here?" Seo-yun's eyes stayed on Amara. "Protecting you." Amara's voice went sharp. "You framed me once. You won't do it again." Seo-yun's mouth curved. "Oh, who will stop me?" She looked at the nurse station, then back at Junho. "If something happens to Hannah because you trusted the wrong person, that's on you. People will ask why you let a foreign nanny take your child." Junho's fear flared again, and fear made him stupid before it made him wise. Minutes later, police arrived with calm faces and serious questions. That was how Amara ended up at the station again, humiliated and trapped by a system that didn't care about her intentions, only her passport and the accusation. And that was how Hannah stood up and said, "That's my mama." Right there, Junho's fear finally broke under the weight of his daughter's truth. He turned on the officer and spoke like a man who had found something stronger than public image. "Investigate properly," he said. "And if you need someone to question the woman who keeps calling the police on my child's caregiver." The officer looked uncertain. "Mr. Kong." Junho's voice lowered, colder. "You will not traumatize my daughter to satisfy a convenient narrative." Hannah clung to Amara's cuffed wrists. "Uncuff my mama." The officer hesitated. Junho stepped closer to the desk, voice firm. "Her name is Amara Okoye. She has clinic records, school records, call logs. And if this becomes a story, it will become a story about how a jealous woman tried to weaponize a child's asthma and the police against an innocent caregiver." Seo-yun wasn't there. She never stayed in the room when consequences arrived. After verification calls, clinic confirmation, and a tense hour of waiting, the officer finally uncuffed Amara with an apology that sounded like paperwork. Amara stood, rubbing her wrists, face controlled but eyes bright with held-back tears. Hannah ran into her arms again. "Mama, come home." Amara kissed her forehead. "I'm here." Junho stepped closer, voice shaking. "I'm sorry. Again." Amara cut him off gently, not cruel, just honest. "Don't apologize to me first. Apologize to Hannah every time you choose fear over her." Junho nodded, throat tight. "You're right." Outside the station, the night air felt sharper. Hannah's small hand stayed locked around Amara's fingers like she was afraid the world would take her again. In the car, Hannah whispered, "Appa, don't send Mama away." Junho's eyes burned. "I won't." Amara stared out the window at the city lights and wondered how many times a heart could be asked to come back after being pushed away. Back at the penthouse, after Hannah finally slept, Junho asked Amara to sit with him. Amara didn't sit. She stood across from him with the calm strength of someone who had learned not to relax until danger passed. Junho spoke quietly. "Seo-yun won't come near Hannah again. I'll make sure of it. And my mother. I will set boundaries." Amara's gaze stayed steady. "Good." Junho swallowed. "Tell me something. Why did she know you so fast?" From the first day, Amara's chest tightened. The secret she had carried like a stone shifted, heavy. Because Amara hadn't applied to this job by accident. Adiz had been her older sister. Not a friend. Not a coincidence. Blood. Adiz had raised Amara in ways their struggling family couldn't always manage. Adiz had protected her. Adiz had been her first picture of love. When Adiz married Junho, the world called it unusual, but to Amara it had been simple. Her sister chose a man and built a home. Then Adiz died, and that home shut its doors like grief could be locked out. Months later, Amara's mother found a letter Adiz had written but never sent, begging Amara to watch over Hannah if anything happened. Amara had promised. She had promised through tears that tasted like blood. So she came to Seoul not for money, not for romance, but for a promise. Now, standing in front of Junho, she realized secrets were already poisoning everything. Truth might hurt, but it was cleaner than fear. "She called me Mama because she recognizes her mother in me," Amara said quietly. Junho went still. "What do you mean?" Amara's voice trembled slightly. "Adiz was my sister." The room seemed to tilt. Junho stared at her, lips parting. "No." "Yes," Amara whispered. "Half-sister." "But my sister." Junho's eyes filled instantly, grief punching through him. "Why didn't you tell me?" Amara's voice hardened with pain. "Because you shut everyone out after she died. And because I was afraid you would think I came with an agenda. And because you already believed lies about me so easily." The words landed like a slap he deserved. Junho covered his face with one hand. "I loved her," he whispered. "I loved Adiz. I didn't know how to live after." Amara's eyes burned. "So you erased her name from the house. And Hannah paid for it with loneliness." Junho's shoulders shook once. "I'm sorry." Amara's voice softened but stayed firm. "Sorry is the beginning, not the end." The next day, Amara told Hannah the truth in simple words. "Your Mama Adiz is your real mama," Amara said gently. "She loved you so much. I'm her sister. I'm your auntie." Hannah's eyes widened. "So your family?" Amara nodded. Hannah's face lit up like sunrise. "That's why I knew you." Then Hannah's voice went small. "Can I still call you Mama?" Amara swallowed the tears rising. "If you want a baby." Hannah nodded with fierce certainty. "I want." Junho watched and felt something unlock in his chest. Not a romance movie moment. Something quieter. Something like forgiveness beginning to consider his name. That night, when Hannah fell asleep between them on the couch after demanding a family cuddle, Junho looked at Amara and spoke like a man who finally understood what he was risking. "I don't want to lose you," he said softly. Amara's eyes held his. "Don't make me easy to lose." Right at this point, after everything Amara endured, after Hannah fought for her with a child's pure courage, if this story has pulled you in, do something right now for Afro-K Ruthless love stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the next Afro-K twist. Like this video, so YouTube knows you want more Korean and African love stories with betrayal and redemption. Comment below and tell the truth. Should Junho be forgiven after he sent her away and let police touch her twice? Or should Amara have walked away forever? And share this story with someone who loves intense storytime drama. Then go watch the other videos on this channel, because the next ruthless love story might be even more dangerous than this one. In the weeks that followed, Seo-yun tried to re-enter the story through gossip and whispers, but Junho cut her off completely. He documented harassment. He warned her family. He made it clear that Hannah was not a weapon to be used in adult wars. Madame Kong didn't soften overnight, but she stopped attacking Amara openly when she saw Hannah's health stabilize, saw her granddaughter sleep through nights without panic. Sometimes love didn't change people's hearts. Sometimes it just forced them to respect what they couldn't control. Junho began to speak Adi's name again in the home. He told Hannah stories about her mother, how Adiz danced while cooking, how she teased him when he worked too much, how she insisted Hannah would be raised with pride in every part of herself, Korean and African, both beautiful, both hers. Hannah listened with wide eyes, and Amara sat nearby, quietly healing in pieces. One evening, after Hannah fell asleep, Junho stood on the balcony and stared at the city lights. Amara stepped out beside him. He spoke softly. I used to think love was something that made men weak. Amara's voice was calm. Love makes men honest. Fear makes them cruel. Junho nodded. I was cruel. Amara looked at him, eyes steady. You were, but you're learning. He turned to her, and for once his voice didn't carry control. It carried vulnerability. I don't know what we are, he admitted. Amara's breath caught, because part of her had begun to care about him. About the man underneath the suit, underneath the grief, the man who could kneel beside his daughter and admit he was wrong. She didn't pretend care was simple. We are complicated, she said honestly. And Hannah is watching. Junho's gaze softened. Then I'll be worth watching. Amara studied him, then nodded slightly. Not forgiveness. Not surrender. Just a door unlocked, not opened all the way. Because trust didn't arrive in one speech. Trust arrived in consistent choices. Months later, Hannah's teacher called Junho and said, she's calmer now. She smiles more. She talks about her family. Family. Not whole. Not absence. Family. On a quiet Sunday morning, Hannah sat at the table drawing. She drew 3 figures holding hands. One tall, one with braids, one small with 2 puff buns. Then she added a 4th figure in the sky, a woman with a star necklace, smiling. She wrote the names slowly, tongue peeking out in concentration. Appa. Mama Amara. Me. Mama Adiz. She held it up proudly. This is my family, Hannah announced. Junho's throat tightened. Amara's eyes shone. Junho leaned down and kissed Hannah's hair. Yes, he whispered. This is your family. Amara touched the drawing gently like it was sacred. Your mama would be proud, she told Hannah. Hannah smiled and said simply, I know. Later, when Hannah ran off to play, Junho looked at Amara and said quietly, Thank you for coming back. Amara's voice was soft but firm. Don't waste it. I won't, he promised. Because in that home, love wasn't a fairy tale. It was a decision made again and again, even when pride wanted to ruin it. And this time, when love came into the room, Junho didn't throw it out. If you made it to the end, you're officially part of the Afro-K Ruthless Love Stories family, so don't watch like a visitor. Subscribe right now for more Korean and African love stories with ruthless twists. Like this video to push it out to more people. Comment your hardest opinion about Junho, Amara, and Seo-yeon, and share it with someone who loves Storytime drama. Then go watch the other videos on this channel immediately, because the next story is waiting and it doesn't come with warnings.